Welcome to the open quarterfinal round of NOVED 2023. Under the motion, as the Palestinian Authority, this House would seek collaboration with Hamas. I call upon opening government to open this debate. Here.
Hi everyone, am I audible and visible?
Audible and visible.
Okay, for PI, just to unmute yourself. Trigger warning, sensitive issue. I'm trying to use a very wise word as possible, and it does not reflect any kind of myself. This is like for the sake of debate. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Israel will not stop to attack Palestinians since Nakba in 1948. As Palestinian authorities, we don't have the alternative to at least counterattack and survive. 3 framings. 1, opening government don't have the burden to prove. Win the war because it's very unpredictable and uncharitable since the huge gap of power between Palestine and also the Israel and not the debate anyway. But number 2, opening government want to prove why as Palestinian authorities this is the justified to do, and the collaborations why it is justified with to the Hamas, and why in the effective side it increased its survivability change for Palestinians, and the consequences of making Hamas become more moderate if the ceasefire will be occurred one day, or decreasing the narrative of terrorism in Hamas and Palestine in the status quo. Third framings is that we are not focusing on the feasibility because the likelihood is very huge. We have the common enemy that attacking our territory, our home, killing the same children of the same blood we are sharing in the status quo. We said the feasibility is always going to be very, very likely on our side of the house. Before jump to the argument, the urgency on our side is our two things. 1, Israel will not stop soon, and they will not stop the attack until all Palestinians die. From 1984, since Nakba until 2023, we have already faced included of United Nations discussions. We're doing embargo to Israel. We give the penalties. We're cutting diplomacy ties, completely boycotting for Israel. This mechanism cannot work because the best solution that they can give is that not stopping the discrimination, not stopping the attacking for Palestinians, but only give foods, give medicines for Palestinians with little effort to give military aids and punishments to Israel. Let's say in the status quo, Israel is developed country and become more developing with a stronger military with US and stronger technology and economy. But number 2, outside that they will not stop it, no other alternative cannot work under true structural analysis. 1, government that is proxy is afraid to opting in. For instance, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Jordania, that in a narrative that are Muslims or blood related are compromising this kind of narrative. Saudi Arabia, willing to normalize relations with Israel, is exchanged for a US defense pact and civilian nuclear program that they will have when they compromise and normalize relations with Israel. None of these countries are siding with you, panels. Note that these countries are the strongest countries that possibly help Palestinian authorities and helping children, helping to give counterattack to defense mechanism for Palestinians, but siding with Israel diplomacy. We say this is not only sign of betrayal, but you have no ally to counterattack Israel to help you in military and to help you to survive outside and medicine and foods. But the second such analysis is that the government of Palestine is in the weakest form because of the more than like 50 years that they will compromise a lot and they will have decreasing power in military and economy and bargaining power. You have no military backups. You have no power have this better defense mechanism with thousands of technology and advancement military with Israel. That is why you need the Hamas as your only ally to give you stuff, the only way, the only actor that give you the self mechanism, defense mechanism to counterattack Israel evilism. Conclusion by this urgency is that with this structural analysis and framings, at base case on up, no stronger likelihood of change to survive. On opposition, you will die anyway on both sides of the house. It's zero-sum game. But at least as Palestinian Authority, with you have no stronger alternative, you will have no stronger power of government. This is your change, and your only ally that exists on your options. The mechanism that possibly be occur is number one. Having this mechanism, what is working with Hamas looks like under opening government is that having discussion with Hamas to make them more moderate and not radical, for example, have some kind of collaborations. For instance, when the ceasefire might be happen in the future, you will ask Hamas to following the order and not to breaking the promises and the peace deal, but also not attacking schools, hospitals like Israel did. No longer affirming the stereotype that Hamas is terrorist. We say Hamas is not. Working closely with Hamas in terms of military, etc., from defense territory and so on. This is the mechanism on the might possibly happen. And feasibility is very simple because they are facing the same enemy of Israel. Most likely they are built in the same value and some blood related. So this is the biggest feasibility and likelihood. First argument. Justification working with Hamas. Why this is the last resort to do so? Because as Hamas is failing anyway. What Hamas did is not taking anyone's rights. What Hamas did is not attacking and killing the children of the Israel since the Nakba cases, protecting Palestinian territory and defense mechanism for them. Because we said the metric of terrorism is taking away agency rights, attacking vulnerable children. If the metric is like that, then just you can decide which the terrorists are not the Hamas. We are not attacking ambulance. We are not bombing hospitals. We are not bombing the schools. We are not attacking and killing thousands of children. But number B, Hamas is very strong in military in the last resort to do so compared to Palestinian Authority. They have a strong tanks, for example. They have a huge army. They have more manpower. They have a grenade that just recently destroyed Israel tanks. They have strong military base that is spread out the strategic areas of Palestine, but they're also able to attacking the missile domes in Israel. They are capable to do so. Second argument is that why resolve into better connection with Palestinian government and Hamas? The problem here is that the connection with Fatah and Hamas is not very good within themselves. This is the reason why striking back from Palestinian to Israel has never been effective, because it is splintery and it is a different strategic tactics within Palestinian Authority with the beginning of Hamas. This looks like bombing into non-strategic area, causing huge casualties. This looks like placing of the battlefield. This looks like security within themselves, between Palestinian Authority for themselves and between Hamas for themselves. Why we can check that under our side of the house? With the moment we have better settlement and collaboration with the two sides, that they can cooperate better, meaning that we can have the same strategies and same tactic to have some different mechanism and to counterattack Israel, for example. The benefit of that is also to decrease the narrative of terrorists in status quo that at very least we can, decreasing and for Hamas to attacking some of like vulnerability of the Israel, for example, but we have the same tactics to have different defense mechanism. Why they increase the likelihood for Palestine to survive? At least when Israel tried to attack hospital and schools, we as Palestinians have backup mechanism to have self-defense. We can have more manpower to defend our families and defend our friends and our children and our borders. Meaning the way are very simple. This is the actor motion. So we are okay if there's going to be not effective in worst case. But our opposition has to engage to our strict action analysis on principle that we have no other alternative. The best way to pander on is only going for Hamas. We are very proud to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Calling Leader of OP to open OP's case.
Hi, am I audible?
Yep, you're audible.
Okay, great. Give me like 30 seconds to set up my timer. Okay. I'll start my speech in three. Sorry. Am I audible? I think I just got disconnected because my connection is unstable.
You're still audible. All is fine. Also, please tell us your POI preference.
All right. POI preference through chat. Please let me know if I got disconnected. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We think we need to understand the main urgency of this debate, or the main urgency of what happened in Gaza right now, right? I think it's like the biggest urgency is to create ceasefire, right? Because hundreds of thousands of people are dying right now, and I think the biggest, most urgent goal is to create ceasefire, and we think it's best for PA to not seek collaboration with Hamas if we want to achieve that. Several set up in my speech. First, I'm going to give you characterization of PA, right? 3 points here. First, PA has been known to have connection with U.S. government. With the U.S. government has had provided PA with several aids in the last few years. Second, PA has been recognized inside the international institutions like UN and legally and internationally representing Palestine. But lastly, PA has the interest of one thing, right? It's to minimize all casualties. Obviously, in the long term, is to achieve independency. But within in short terms, they want to minimize all casualty. We understand that PA has been known for like a more softer stance than Hamas. But when it's in the threat of genocide and all your families and people in great dangers, we think it's intuitive for PA to have the interest to provide to do something to stop the current casualties and the current threats of genocide that happen in the status quo, right? So keep in mind of those interests. The second point of setup, then I'm going to explain to you why the power of Hamas, like what OG wants in this debate, will not get us anywhere, right? Two things. First, there's an asymmetric military capabilities, right? It's just very hard to believe that Hamas will be able to provide like military capabilities or military strategies that are able to win against Israel, right? I think they're never really explained to you why then depending on Hamas or collaborating with Hamas will eventually help us winning the war. But second, I think Hamas is like an ideology-based movement. So they're based because there's a very ideology-based movement. They're unable to compromise, and they will attack more radically, like exactly what happened that led us to this point in the status quo, right? On the comparison, then we think a PA is more a political body, a more political organization that they use strategies and they use political leverage in putting actions, comparing to Hamas that is more radical and more military-based, using their ideology as their main drives to do something, right? So what happened in last point of setup then? What will happen in opposition? What do we want as opposition is debate? Right? Things. First, we're not going to collaborate with Hamas. We're not going to associate ourselves with Hamas and PA as the main the legal representation of Palestine will not do anything or collaborate anything with Hamas, right? But second, we will also try to negotiate using our legal leverage with US, with UN, with like basically countries inside the international system, and we're able to like ask for aid, ask for support to ceasefire and whatnot. So that's what we're going to do as a position comparison, right? So let's back to our case. I think what will happen in OO when we are not collaborating with Hamas, we will be able to create more safe space for these people, a safer solution for these people, right? But let's characterize several problems in the status quo. First, I think I think the attack towards Israel by Hamas recently has created three things. First, the narrative that Palestine is the enemy, that they're merciless, that they're the killer. It justifies the colonializations of Israel, and the retaliation that's been going on now. The second, it's harder for international organizations to help or for other states to support Palestine, right? Because with violence from both sides, they don't want to perceive as supporting the bad guy. They don't want to perceive as supporting Hamas, who essentially like attacking Israel first. So at best, those kind of organizations, those kind of states are staying neutral. But lastly, it's create a massive anger from Israel, and it erase all ceasefire attempts in the past and shift Israel's goals to a permanent annihilation. Why is this so, right? I think Hamas is perceived as representing the people of Palestinians, so they just think that all Palestinian is brutals, all Palestinian is a terrorist, and they've been and it's overshadowing the real issues between Israel and Palestine. It's overshadowing the real problem and who is the real victims inside this inside this problem, right? This is why even the kids in Palestine are being killed because they're seen as a part of Hamas, they're seen as a part of terrorist network, and they have to like burn the whole city and the whole Gaza, right? What could be different in our side? By not collaborating, we can tell them that we're different from Hamas, that we're not a part of the attack to Israel, and we're open to a diplomatic discussion and ceasefire, and that we're the victim and we're trying to protect our people. It helps a neighbor's country to open their gate for Palestinian refugees. This is important for a fast, direct escape, especially towards kids and women, right? It gives huge political leverage where countries will feel safer to support Palestinians because they know that what their support is PA and what their support is the civilians inside Palestine. It gives more reason for US to push Israel to minimize the attack or change their strategy that minimize civilians victims. Why is that so? And this is important, right? Because we're talking about US. Two things. US in the status quo has been worrying regarding Iran's involvement in the war with the Hezbollah attacks to Israel in Yemen with missiles, right? But US also afraid from the Arab countries like Arab Saudi to retaliate from their alliances with and help Palestine. So I think because of those two reasons, I think US has a lot of incentive to actually negotiate with Israel, not like completely stopping Israel because that's like too idealistic, but at least to argue to compromise with Israel. That Israel has to minimize the civilians victims, right? But the reason why it's hard for US to stop Israel to initiate the discussion is because US has not been able to convince Netanyahu that they will be able to maintain their power in Gaza, right? However, with PA not collaborating with Hamas and initiate diplomatic discussion in the international floor, several things will change, right? First, US will be able to negotiate for ceasefire, like what happened in the last 10 years, and will be able to ask Israel to just stop the aggression and maintain the status quo, like what happened in the last 5 to 10 years, right? This is not a best case scenario. This has been done before. But second, US will be able to become a negotiator between PA and Israel, again, has been done before to maintain the ceasefire and to maintain at least the order inside Gaza, right? But lastly, then, why it will be good in the long term, right? Because it's the question of OG and the burden that OG pushes to OO, right? I think what will good and what if anything was good from the current invasion is it renews people awareness of what actually happened. It renews people aware that people in Palestine are actually dying every day. They are unable to access a safe life, right? I think even when ceasefire happen in our side, it won't just stop there. The fight for independence will still be good and will be better because it's being supported by people all around the world. But with the narrative that they're the victim, the narrative that they're not a terrorist, with the narrative that there should be able to be supported to have like a proper life in that area, right? But and another point I want to point out that Netanyahu right now is losing political approval with the current demonstration, and within something that's good as well for OO. So.
Thank you, Leader of Up. Calling DPM to close OG's case.
Sorry, I think my teammate is disconnected. So can you?
Okay. Let's wait for a minute. Let me pause the record first.
Am I audible?
Audible and visible.
Thank you. Trigger warning, talking about wars. I'm scared, but yeah, because this is only for the purpose of this debate. But by the way, like save Palestine. PI preference, just unmute. Most likely, we'll taking one from closing for cross-bench engagement. If not, opening, sure. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. 3 strategic policy to kick out OO of this debate. I think that it's sure that Hamas is still there on your side. How then you will likely to stop them from being radical? It's never answered in LO. This means on your side, no ceasefire will happen anyway. We at least showed them by making this Hamas more moderate. On our side, we can still make it somehow more moderate. The likelihood of ceasefire will likely to happen still more bitter on our side. On your side, bad image still happens though, right? It's unclear for me what is the distinction that you want to show because you don't show the incentive for them to actually listen that you are different from the Hamas within himself, right? That is why you still need to cooperate. But secondly, why is Hamas built in the first place? It's to actually help Palestinians, like what they say is the ideology thing, right? It's unclear to me why they by cooperating they will likely to backlash and fight within each other, right? Especially when they characterize that more people are supporting Palestine. So I don't get the tangible harm of it. But thirdly, they said they want likely to like working closely with US and negotiate with Israel and have the ceasefire. This is contingent on Israel feels safe from the Palestine, like exactly what LO say. No no characterization why Palestine will likely to back down and make Israel feel safe on their side, right? How you impact Hamas and to stop and comply on OO, it's unclear to me their benefit. This means no benefit will likely to happen. On our side, we show how the Hamas have incentive to actually more moderate, right? The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna weigh justification why working with Hamas is the last resort for Palestine to defend themselves. This is the principal argument that Stanley brings. What Stanley told you, two things. One, this is the last resort for them to actually survive because Israel is not stopping, and the other alternative in status quo is actually bad. The image is also bad in status quo. Like those Palestinians, whatever they do, they're still labeled as terrorists anyway. The fact that many people don't understand that Hamas do this to actually defend Palestinians shows to you that this bad image will still likely to become labeled in status quo. But secondly, this is also a losing strategy to actually not working with them, because the burden on opposition is you not only not working them, but like actively opposing. You make them even more radical. You make them even have nothing to lose. That is why you have no compliance happens on their side, right? Why this already wins the OG the win this debate immediately. In principle, this is the last resort for them to survive. Regardless, whatever the methodology, it is more important for in principle to actually keep them alive because this is the last resource. But secondly, the comparative on-op is failing. They need to defend. Why all of the sudden people are supporting Palestine as much as Hamas want to do it, right? Even if their support, the gravity of it is different, right? With that not answer, OG is winning this debate. But even if you want to make this debate practical, we told you two mechanization how they will likely to work with Hamas. That is incredibly beneficial. This was like, hey, having more discussion that makes them somehow more moderate and moderate and not radical, and somehow to comply with the Fatah within themselves. Secondly, having more united body of the military in defense, right? The comparative is Stanley shows to you in this 50 years, Palestine government Fatah is very weak because exactly this splintery, right? That is why OG is far better because we make sure there's a far better strategy to actually makes you want to actually unite in the first place. Two extension. How by working with Hamas, you unite the Palestinian itself. This is the most tangible benefit because the change that happens is internally within Israel itself, Palestinian itself. Secondly, how then working with Hamas betters the international image of Hamas and Palestine itself. First extension, how by working with Hamas, you unite the Palestinian itself. The context is Palestine right now is weak because it's splintery within Gaza and West Bank. Palestine is splintered by two. That is why they're very weak in a lot of aspects. For instance, like making a rational decision, making those military base that is working towards the Palestinian itself, right? Why then? Why working with Hamas is the symbol of unity within the two, and how this likely unite the Palestinian. Three structural reasons. Because now this is likely to symbolize that they agree on something. This is the first time that they agree of something of like Gaza and West Bank in 50 years. This is the symbolize of unity within the Palestinian itself, right? But secondly, this also makes more discussion within happens, right? Hamas need to consult within Gaza and West Bank itself. That makes you want to unite as a Palestinian itself. Thirdly, more collaboration that makes the incentive to actually unite within themselves. For instance, like collaboration making more military base. For instance, like developing bombs or developing tanks within themselves. Those collaboration makes them have more interaction. There's an incentive for you to actually unite as a Palestine itself. What is the impact of this extension? Palestine have a better condition as a state to unite. That makes you an easier way to have political power within themselves. Secondly, having stronger unity that makes them easier to actually make decisions within the wars within themselves. Why this impacts wins OG this debate? This impact is not contingent on the result of the war of Hamas, because we say that this impacts how you will unite the Palestinian itself. You will make them more unite internally, right? But secondly, the impact is the most tangible because that gives significant change, because the change happens internally, not contingent whatever happening in the war, what happened with the US, etc., etc. That is why OG wins this debate. But second extension then, how working with Hamas better the international image of Hamas in Palestine? Op might said that, it will likely to worsen the buy-in of the people because you are working with terrorists, right? But we said it's unlikely by trick mechanization. By you working with Hamas, it means you're likely to have more talk and more discussion that makes them somehow more moderate. That some make somehow to even comply to the law itself. Why this is feasible? Because like the Fatah itself is the higher dignity within itself. That's why there's a discussion and agreement they will likely to comply towards within themselves. Sure. Yeah.
How could it create a productive discussion if Hamas is known as a terrorist and known for aggressive and strategic attacks to civilians in Israel?
The fact that they are still in the same fighting the same enemy, the fact that they are still the same blood itself, there's an incentive for you to actually make them collaborate itself and make the discussion well. On your side, no discussion happens. Hamas is become more radical on your side. That is why it's even more harmful on your side, right? Secondly, working with Hamas and Fatah can change the image and fix the misunderstanding within the world within themselves, right? For instance, like now Fatah is united, they will likely to show to you that, Hamas is actually a self-defense mechanism. Hamas is actually a good people, right? This is why you can fix the misunderstanding of the terrorism within themselves, right? But thirdly, this also prevent future harms. Now that Hamas will not be radical, they will likely to have no justification from Israel for you to actually even more harmful in the future, right? What do you get from here? Two things. One, you make more people to actually understand the circumstances of it. You make more people want to buy in. You make more people want to support the Palestinian itself. That is why externally we get more political buy-in. Exactly, we change the image of the Hamas itself. Secondly, it prevents the incentive to Israel to justify their action and be more radical in the future because we back it down internally, right? That is why when discussion happens, ceasefire will likely to happen on our side. Why then this impact is important? A, we don't worsen the position of the Palestinian war because we say right now status quo is a losing game in the Palestine, right? At least when we change the structure internally, the image within themselves, you more likely to don't worsen the position of Palestine within the war. Secondly, we improve the image of Hamas internationally, you will likely to have better help on our side of the house, right? Why then OG wins debate? OG wins debate because we prove you four things. One, we prove to you why in principle this is a very justified method because this is the last resort for Palestine to defend themselves. Secondly, we mechanize how you will likely to work with Hamas and how this will likely to beneficial. Thirdly, how you will likely to unite the Palestinian internally. Fourthly, we prove to you how you get better international image of Hamas and Palestine. That is why OG wins.
Thank you, DPM. I'm terribly sorry. There's someone at the door. I would have to go for a little bit. Yeah, I will be back in a little bit.
I speak like this. Am I clearly audible?
Yeah, there's no problem.
Okay. Now, so I'm facing a connection issue. So if I got disconnected, please wait for me and confirm. I will confirm it through my PA. Now, I'm starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Before moving on to my substantives, I will give several clarifications regarding the simple reality check that is currently happening in regards to Israel Palestinian itself, right? If any benches want to prove that the coalition is justified, they need to do simple reality check on what's happening in the current status quo regarding the Israel-Palestinian war. That includes how for more than 70 years, for example, that includes Israel has used Hamas as justification to prolong the war, to kill kids, to bomb masjids, for example, to do human genocide, and so on and so forth. Right? Irrespective of whether or not it's true that Hamas is terrorist, but the fact that Israel is using the propaganda against Hamas to justify the human genocide in Israel alone is already toppling down all the benefit coming from the government bench, right? Because as what Mr. Odipol tell you is that what OG do is principally, if they want to play in principally give justification for Israel propaganda, validating the nuances onto why Palestinians deserve to be killed, for example, exactly because we're collaborating with Hamas, for example, right? Exactly due to the fact that you collaborate with Hamas, regardless of whether it's true or not that Hamas is terrorist. We don't think that it's important to be talked about in this debate, but that's what the propaganda is saying, and you give justification, right? POI preference, raise your hand. The biggest question for opening government, why then it is within the interest of PA, notice that this is an actor motion as PA, right? It is within the interest of PA to make better narrative for Hamas, to give Hamas better image and so on and so forth. Because if we're talking as PA, our main interest is to proliferate ceasefire, for example, or to avoid any more casualties, for example, and to not give justifications for Israel to always bomb us in Gaza or in Jerusalem, for example, right? We don't understand the main urgency from OG. We don't know why it is within our interest to collaborate with Hamas, right? But let's engage with OG more regarding this, right? OG told you that there is no alternative and that this is urgent to collaborate with Hamas. But before jumping into the impact, let's step back to the characterization of the actor, right? There is really distinctive characterization of PA and Hamas that Sutra already bring to you, but they decided to decided to disengage and not and being dismissive. PA has much more political power and international exposure due to the fact that it has become the mainly recognized Palestinian government, several times conducting discussions with the US, for example, and receiving aid and help, for example, from the other countries, for example, it's all through PA. PA is the current legitimate government, so of course, they have softer stance due to the fact that they try to be populist and not putting Palestinian in the risk of harm, right? Not giving justifications for Israel to keep bombing us, for example. Secondly, different connection with Hamas. Hamas warriors are perceived as terrorists by the people due to the fact that they're radical and hostile when it comes to the war against Israel. They're not afraid of like doing bombing towards Israel. They're not afraid of the impact that Israel is going to bomb much more with much more bigger magnitude because there is no opportunity cost that Hamas take into account, right? Exactly, because they are an ideology-based military group, right? They are not a political government, internationally recognized government like PA and so on and so forth, right? So we think that under this characterization, this is a policy debate, right? OG needs to give likelihood onto why then, with this very distinctive characterizations, why then is it possible to create collaborations between PA and Hamas in itself, right? So what's the tipping point between the conversation between OG and OO? Under their side, they're going to principally give justification for Zionist propaganda to defame Palestinian suffering. They're going to give principal justification for Israel to keep attacking, and moreover, adding the magnitude of the attack exactly because currently Palestine are collaborating with violent military group like Hamas. So if they want to play in the principal justification, they give principal justification for Zionist propaganda. Moreover, knowing the nuances are very negative and hostile under their side of the house, this causes the opportunity for other countries to support you, to support us, to support Palestinians and give aid towards Palestine, for example. Exactly, because OG shift the stance and the nuances from Palestinian being the victim to Palestinian, for example, being, succumb to the Zionist propaganda of Palestinian being the terrorists alongside with Hamas, for example, right? We don't want that SPA. This is an after motion. SPA as a legitimate government body, we don't want that to happen. On our side, we try to maintain the diplomatic and political leverage. We don't want to lose the current power that we have. We don't want the world to turn their backs against us. Why is this important? We think this harms the current progress in the status quo because currently we're going to go back to simple reality check. Netanyahu, the president of Israel, is currently facing very big magnitude of backlash due to this scandalous corruption and his interest to always prolong the war, right? If you search on Google like demonstration against Netanyahu, currently the people of Israel want to stop the war between Israel and Palestinians because the people perceive the war is only the bad faith of Netanyahu. So under our side, we use this momentum to proliferate discussion and agreement to do ceasefire, for example, because we already gain support and also gain a recognition of by the Israel people in itself, for example, right? But what they do under the side of the house, they disregard this momentum that Netanyahu is no longer the man in power, but that disregard this momentum and they decide to justify and validate all of the framing and justifications that the Israel and the Zionists do against Palestinian, right? We don't want that as Palestinian Authority. Notice that they never even give you no answer why then it is within the interest of PA to collaborate with Hamas, right? But let's engage to their other case, right? Under that, we don't they said that under the side of the house they're going to like collaborate and it will make Hamas be more peaceful, it will give Hamas be more moderate and so on and so forth, right? We don't think that's going to happen under OG. It's already secure. Why there is we think that the power relation is that the PA is the biggest authority in Palestinian in itself, right now. It's because PA is the internationally recognized government. But currently, Hamas is already losing their resources. They don't have excessive manpower. They don't have money, for example. They don't have excessive military military equipment and so on and so forth, right? So we think that this is exactly the momentum where Israel is going to open discussions and so on and so forth with PA because they know that Hamas is not the main power in Palestinian Authority, for example, right? But what happened under OG when they decide to collaborate with Hamas as PA, for example, PA will be forced and will have to supply Hamas in terms of resources, in terms of military equipment, and so on and so forth. So what they do is they give nuances that Hamas will keep going forward with the hostility, for example, will keep bombing and so on and so forth against Israel, and that's what incentivizes Israel to attack back. So when you talk about survivability of the Palestinian, you need to vote for OO negate. Thank you.
Thank you, DLO, for that speech. To open the closing debate, I call upon member of POF.
Cek mau di dulu, Pak.
Audible.
Sorry nggak bisa on-cam, sinyalnya di live. I just unmuting yourself. I just unmuting yourself. Saya pernah Thierry kok nembak.
Wait, just to confirm, does anyone else feel like the voice is kind of, kayak inside an aquarium? Is it audible enough for everyone?
Agak mumbly.
Yeah, it's a little mampet, the voice.
Aman ya berarti?
Aman.
Okay. Starting my speech, POI unmute ya. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think it was questionable from OO the time when they say, "Oh, Israel suddenly will be a good actor." The time when Fatah go away from Hamas simply because we are perceived Fatah as a good actor and so forth and so on. We say this condition will never happen. Why is that so? We understand how Netanyahu come from ultranationalist political party. This is why everything that you believe, everything what happened with Fatah, at the end of the day, they still believe that I should occupy all the things that have by the Palestinian people, for example. So I don't understand how it happened. But even if you're talking about the supporting for international embodiment, irrespective how people perceive Fatah at the end of the day, international embodiment will be spread up into two people who are supporting Israeli and the one who supported Palestinian and so forth and so on. So at the end of the day, I don't get any explanation how it can be happen. But second of all, the time when OO talking about there is benefit, it's something that is very beneficial, for example, because it's necessary for you to rely with the ability of the Hamas and so forth and so on. Two questions happen. First, we say it's very hard for you to go away from Hamas simply because Hamas have supported people in Palestine, for example. Hamas perceived as a good actor, as a savior, for example. This is why the time when Fatah losing support and Fatah stated with we're away from Hamas, this is the time when you lose all the support from Palestinian people. But second of all, on how Hamas have relation with Muhammad Yassin, for example. This is the religious leader who are supported and related as one who are spiritual and so on. At the end of this, I don't get any beneficial that can happen the time when you as a Fatah losing any supported with Palestinian people. Last but not least, but even if it will be perceived as a bad guy anyway by international embodiment. We say it's totally okay, right or wrong. This is my country, for example. Irrespective how you perceive, at the end of the day, it's your obligation as official embodiment of the government to support your own people. We say Hamas is still part of your, Palestinian supporter, for example. They fight for the independent for the Palestinians. So I don't get any explanation why something not justifiable for you to left out for the people work together, fight together to win our beneficial. We appreciate how talking about it's something that are not talking about how to win the benefit or we are getting support and so far and so on. This is why we need still Hamas to cooperate to creating better strategies. But I think there is still lack of explanation whether Hamas want to collaborate with Fatah. This is how the gap that you want to fulfill as closing government term. What my another rebuttal will be integrated on my space. What I'm going to talk to you. First, I will try to operate and mechanize how check and balance that happen toward Hamas with Fatah can be something that are likely, but second of all, I will prove to you why then at the end of the day, collaboration is the only way for us to give protection, to unifying a lot of families that begin spread up after the first intifada and so far and so on. Let's jump the first one. Why is only way to creating check and balances toward the Hamas? What's the problem that conduct by Hamas and repeatedly happen again? The time when Hamas initiate attack to Israel and directly Israel conducting attack back, and at the end of the day, it's creating a lot of casualty. We say those conditions will never be happen. The time when you are able to prevent the Hamas by collaboration. We say that when you collaborate together, means that you will spread up information, you will spread up the strategy, and you will feel how the best that we want to operate the best thing that we can get for international support or even something that beneficial. But why then Hamas want to collaborate until at the end of the day? I think this debate is talking about it's a core time frame that happened right now, right? The time when Hamas losing all the ability, they are still very desperate right now simply because they're attacked back by Israeli. Or even chaos that happened in Gaza. They lost a lot of resources and so on and so on. At the end of the day, they don't have any ability. They don't have ability to survive. If they never receive the help from the Fatah, for example. This is why they need to follow all the Fatah demand. But second of all, we say it's something that is important for the Hamas to do this, because if it's not, Hamas won't have enough intention to collaborate with have no intention to collaborate with Fatah because they feel that Fatah is something that are too soft and so on and so on. This is why this is the best time for Fatah to opt in. This show up the urgency that never being taught by the opening debate. But what is the implication in that? The implication we're talking about two things. First is something that are more efficient because basically the only embodiment who have the ability to protect Gaza is just Hamas, and PA don't have enough resources to spread up their ability to protect West Bank and also Gaza. This is something very questionable because the time when you go away with Hamas means that you will lose ability for you to protect the people in Gaza. There's will more desperate, you will become more chaos and so forth and so on. But second of all, we say this is the only choice for Fatah in order for them to control again in Gaza. You understand, after the first intifada, Fatah lose all their control into the Gaza simply because they feel that Fatah is not something that are strong enough. We say in status quo, Fatah need their ability to control Gaza again in order for them to maintaining their reputation and power. Because we see if you are an official embodiment and you don't have the ability to control your territory is something bad at the end of the day, how Fatah will lose international support because they just perceive as they only represent small amount of Palestinian. Which is this condition is no longer beneficial. That's why Fatah up end. But second of all, I will talking about the protection. But before that, if I review, 3, 2,
Yes.
1. Okay.
Given that Hamas has already losing major resources from the current war, how do you think this will still be beneficial on your side?
We say it's totally okay because the war will still prolonging until at the end of the day. This is even not talking about the efficiency of the ability for you to minimize the harm that exists, because irrespective you are still support Hamas or not, the war will still exist because Netanyahu is someone who come from ultranationalist, means that before they reach their goal, they are still do it, the war will still prolonging. But second of all, talking about the protection, we say the context how Palestinian access after the first intifada is they're spread up and divided into two parts. West Bank and Gaza Strip, right? Where is the problem arise? A lot of people divided and spread from their family, for example. They're losing their connection and so forth and so on. It's getting worse after Intifada 2, the time when Gaza being controlled by Hamas and so forth and so on. We say the time we will collaborate, we will have the chance for people in West Bank or people in Gaza to go together, for example, unifying the families is something very important because this the likely benefit that are very probable to be happen after all the agony that you have. The ability for you to gather with your family is something very important. At least we are still creating any benefit after all the agony that they have. But at the end of the day, it's something still beneficial because you will able to unify the nation the time when you go together. Together nationalism. Very proud to propose.
Thank you, member of CUF. Calling member of UP to open CO's case.
Hi, am I audible?
Audible, clearly.
Yeah. Okay. VOI through chat or raise hand. Terus, disclaimer, anything I say is for debate purpose only. So if there is a misspoke I don't mean it. Timer. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. One big characteristics missing coming from all benches is about the Fatah ideology, right? Because I think what we need to understand is on how Fatah is an Arab Palestinian, therefore they are more tolerating towards Israelis and they are not as idealistic as Hamas. So I think the biggest questions existing in the debate is on why first Fatah has the interest to working with Hamas despite the huge ideology differences, the fact that this is not the first attack upon Gaza, and why and Fatah are not wanting to collaborating, we believe that, and why suddenly the principle that the government bring is important for the PA to begin with. I think this is something that the question is still missing, right? Because I think this debate is not working in a vacuum. This is a interest debate, means that the fact that this is an interest debate means that the first you're seeking collaboration, you need to understand, we need to analyze whether or not Hamas wants to collaborate to begin with. They need to accept, they need to explain why Hamas want to accept us despite the long history and the conflict we had, and why Hamas want to sacrifice their ideology for Fatah or something like that. Because the trade-off of Fatah initiating to working with Hamas first, it creates so much harm for Fatah position internationally and for our support. So what is the identity in closing opposition? First, we're gonna explain to you the process on why we're gonna give ceasefire to the Palestinian, and we're going to create a separation from Hamas and Palestine to begin with, and how we're going to show why comparatively it's going to be so much worse in government's bench, right? So I think I'm going to bring one simple extension talking about why not collaborating with Hamas means a ceasefire in Palestine. You're probably going to think that it sounds like opening a position, but it's different because we're going to explain the process. Something that opening a position means, and almost all benches means, and we believe this is the most important to the debate because we need to analyze how the actor are gonna react upon one another. First, let's analyze what is Fatah dynamic internationally and internally inside of the Palestinian on itself. Fatah is an Arab Palestinian group, means that internationally Arab have a close relation with Fatah. And exactly like what opening government said on how Arab currently start to toning down to US and start to condemning Hamas. We believe that if we as Fatah working with Hamas, we're gonna lose Arab support, and we're gonna have a bad image internationally. But one thing to be noted as well is on how Hamas hate Fatah. Means that a lot of people in Gaza doesn't like Fatah and doesn't like PA to begin with, and thinking that Hamas is the legitimate power in Palestine to begin with. So I think Fatah has another task if they want to uh, working and seek collaboration and seek the impact that government want to bring, because they need to acknowledge acknowledge Hamas to begin with, something that government side never explained. I'm going to explain to you next on how Hamas position is currently weakening, and therefore we're gonna have a leeway to Fatah enter with their ideology and their strategy itself, and gonna help the toning down the war that is currently happening. Because I think with the Israel massive attack to Palestine right now, Hamas resources are being pushed down the line on how Hamas currently are losing its power, Hamas people are dying, and their resources are taken off. Now, therefore, Fatah would have the will have the capability to take charge and be the international image of Palestine, and they can talk to other. Now Fatah has the resources, because I think Arab would want to help Fatah, especially if Fatah and ideology is lining up, and now that Israel cannot use the framing that Hamas is terrorist, Palestine is terrorist, therefore we need to attack them, because now you as an Arab will talk to Israel and saying that, hey, the people in power now is not Hamas anymore, it's Fatah, they will unlikely to attack you. Israel cannot explain that this is a self-defense anymore, and etc., etc. This exactly shows on how the genocide will stop, right? Because Israel cannot use that. Also, people that backing up Israel is saying no because they are also in the side of Fatah to begin with. Comparatively, if we decide to go with government bench and collaborate, we're gonna lose both powers, because both powers, Fatah will now not have the backup from Arab. We're gonna lose both of our power, right? Because our resources combined will not be able to tackle Israel or US. So we now have no backup plan. But before that, OG.
Hamas is still there on your side, and when you actively opposing them, this exactly when the Hamas will likely to become more radical. This means no incentive from Israel to actually back down and make ceasefire on your side.
I think sadly what is happening now is how Hamas is currently being put down the line with the non-stop attack. So I think we believe that Hamas is weakening position of Hamas is weakening because of this massive attack currently happening. Therefore, we believe that Fatah now would need to take charge to begin with, and I think Hamas wouldn't want to attack Fatah when there is an Israeli committing a war crime every single day. But I think, okay, now comparatively, I'm going to explain on how the idea coming from government also cannot run, because their whole idea is, hey, we want to collaborate, Hamas image will get better, we're going to have our strategy. I think Hamas is currently bigger one, Fatah. So Fatah joining them, they most likely to pander to Hamas ideology that they really hate. And I think that this is the prerequisite for all government bench idea to run. So if they cannot prove to us why Hamas is going to get better internationally, they cannot win the debate. So why choosing a position in this debate is simple, because we explain the process on something that is missing from our benches, and we explain the importance why why our strategy is important and the manifestation so proud to propose.
Thank you, Member of FOP. Calling GovWeb to close Gov bench case.
Hi everyone. Is my voice clear?
Clear.
Yeah, cool. I go through the chat box. Pronouns your him. Just disclaimer: whatever I say in this particular debate is not in line with my political stances on the matter, and I'm sorry if I meant to offend anyone. Everything I will say is just for the spirit of the debate. Yeah. Speech and baterai gue mau habis. Aduh. Enggak, pakai langsung gue aja. Udah, ini ya. Begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. I will directly compare why the CG goes above every other benches in this particular debate. Let's talk about from OG. Why we are better than OG? First of all, we mechanize OG's case in unity to begin with. Why this is very important? Because it answers the questions coming from CO and also O on why then Hamas will want to collaborate to begin with. What Ilham told you is Hamas is something that is very desperate, exactly because of the incoming invasion, and also because of how Hamas used all of their resources in order to invade Israel for the past couple of weeks. What did this show? This shows in this particular in this time frame, Hamas is weaker comparative towards PA. Consider that this is something different from the time frame that happens after this second intifada. The reason why Hamas can overthrow PA in Gaza exactly because they are way more powerful in that specific time frame. We said that is no longer relevant. We proved to you then why in this specific time frame Hamas is already way weaker. Therefore, it is our chance to go above them and seize the power vacuum that exists.
Secondly, even if sure, Hamas is technically weak, we say something that's okay, considering that they are also very close to an extent with Iran, for example. We say to an extent Iran will always help proliferate Hamas exactly because Iran want to make sure that they still have the influence in Gaza, for example. There will always be backup coming from Iran or other nations or private entities like NGOs and NPOs in order to protect Hamas to begin with. Therefore, even if Hamas in this particular time frame is very weak, therefore we don't get benefit, we say in the long run they will still improve at the end of the day. Thirdly, then, even if Hamas don't bring any benefit whatsoever, bring any practical benefit, we say number one, you always have the interest to protect the people of Palestine in itself. We say to an extent Gaza and the people of Gaza is also within the interest of PA in itself to protect. Secondly, you also have the interest as PA to curb all of your influences in the Palestinian region to begin with. Right? This also considers the land of Gaza in itself. Therefore, the moment when the authority in Gaza in itself is somewhat very weak, therefore you have the incentive as PA to curb your power there. Therefore, we say regardless of practical benefit, it is something that is in line within the interest of PA in itself. But let's talk about opposition benches. Let's talk about OO first. OO talks about number one. They talk about getting external help. This is why Ilham case is very important. Ilham told you there will always be two spectrums. There will always be people who try in the echo chamber of Palestinians and also in the echo chamber of Israeli. And so why this is something that is very true. Two reasonings. Number one, this is because religious values. You cannot undermine the historical value that they have, that these people, that these nations have always upheld since the very beginning. They have defended Palestine, even if they will always defend Palestine, even if Palestine did also commit atrocities. They will also defend Israel, even if Israel committed atrocities. Exactly because of the propaganda of self-defense in itself. They will always blame the other party. Therefore, they will always access a echo chamber. Therefore, there will always be help towards the Palestinian government to begin with, right? But secondly, then, allies always existed between both sides. Therefore, the moment when US tries to protect Israel, therefore, you as allies cannot help to intervene in Palestinian government to begin with. This also happens, towards the people the nations that protect Palestinian to begin with. Therefore, the moment when other nations try to protect Palestinian, their allies cannot follow suit. Therefore, this creates a clear separation between two sides. Therefore, regardless of what opposition tries to prove, there will always be help towards both sides in the house. Therefore, it is something that's not important. But lastly, then, NGOs and NPOs will always exist to begin with. Therefore, there will always be help towards the Gaza. This, regardless of what happens in the state affairs, even if there will be normalization coming from Saudi Arabia, but because of the people of Saudi Arabia still care about Palestinian itself, therefore they will still donate to private NPOs and NGOs to begin with. Therefore, there will always be help. This is something that's not, therefore, at its best, this particular argument is marginal. Lastly, then, the idea of justification of war coming from OO, they say, no justification for because we help terrorist group. Number one, we say Israel's propaganda is in the terms of self-defense. Therefore, the moment when PA doesn't attack, therefore they do not have the casus belli or the justification of war to attack PA in itself. This one neighbor nation, even if they collaborate with Hamas to begin with, they will still never be attacked by Israeli because Israel's main propaganda is in self-defense. They will only attack when they are being attacked. Therefore, the moment when PA doesn't attack, we say nothing will happen, even if we collaborate. Secondly, regardless of what oppositions say, war will always happen because Hamas will always be seen as a representation of Palestine to begin with. This one, West Bank will still have casualties, even if they are not within the jurisdiction of Hamas in itself. This shows, regardless of what happened, regardless of the justification of war, there will always be war. There will always be people dying in the West Bank in the jurisdiction of PA in itself. Therefore, this argument is something that's not exclusive to begin with, and it's symmetric on the both sides. But what then is the comparative is better? Because on our side, the moment when war happens, we have way better collaboration. These are, for example, spying, intelligence, and so on and so forth, or giving resources towards each other. Therefore, the more war happens, there will be better collaboration, there will be better help on the both sides. We prove to you why the war will always happen, but we prove to you when war happens, why it is something that can be minimized the harms under closing government. Lastly, then, CO told you firstly on the idea of ideology. We say regardless of what the ideology of Fatah and also Hamas, we say there will always be collaboration. This why, Communist Party in China, PKI, and also PNE Indonesia, for example, will still collaborate to fight against, the Netherlands, exactly because they're fighting the common enemy. The moment when there's clear enemy, people, no matter the ideology, the moment they came from the same blood, they will still try to defend their own brothers and sisters. Therefore, it is something that is not important. Secondly, then, Hamas, they say, Hamas is weak, therefore they have a leeway to destroy it. We say number one, this is not efficient comparative towards government bench, exactly because you're open to attacks coming from Israel to begin with. I'll prove to you why Israel will always have the incentive to attack PA in itself, because Hamas is the representation of Palestinians to begin with. But secondly, PA doesn't have the power to actually execute this kind of policy to begin with. Exactly because comparative towards Hamas, PA doesn't have a huge military might to begin with. And even if they do have the military might, we say it is really comparative force because it is not efficient to begin with, right? Therefore, it is better for you to seek collaboration. Understand that our argument is not why PA is still way stronger. We say the moment Hamas is desperate, they at least need some kind of help, right? Therefore, even if PA is not that strong, they will still try to gain any kind of help, exactly because they're desperate. They want to keep their influences in the Gaza region. So proud to propose.
Thank you, GovWhip. Calling up Whip to close the debate.
Yeah, POI preferred method is unmute yourself. Am I audible, by the way?
Yep, you're audible. Clear.
Okay, sure. My timer starting in 3, 2, 1. What do we from arguments coming from OG and the repetitive extension coming from CG? I think that two clarifications against this. Firstly, I do not understand the delta at all if Israel would still attack you under your side of the house and you cannot provide any sort of mechanism of how they're going to at the very least stop and actually helping the people on the ground. I don't think that you have any delta at all. But secondly, then I think that what we also do not understand is that how is it likely, because your all of the argument coming from OG and D is really contingent upon how would Hamas would actually comply, because two things. Firstly, I think that Hamas is in the very first place more extreme and they don't believe in so-called diplomatic resolution, and that's why they do the strike and that's why they do it for so many years. But secondly, they do not also want to comply because there is a pre-existing tension between Hamas and Fatah, because Fatah won diplomatic one and Hamas done, and this is why they have an ideological difference. Why then under US other house the ideological difference would suddenly change and they would suddenly be a lovey-dovey couple, right? I think that they just lose on being dismissed as Fatah, right? I think that this is what is actually our identity and how is it actually different from OO, because we don't care about Netanyahu. What we really wanted to do is that we want to completely disassociate from Hamas. So all right, you can label Hamas as terrorists, we don't care. They do not represent Palestinian or Palestine in any way. So yeah, if they are radical in both sides, the delta is under our house, they're not associated at all with us. And we also do not want to physically fight against Israel, so that's why the arguments talking about fighting common enemy just doesn't make sense at all. But under that, since the whole government have comparatively super same argument, I'm just gonna bring two clash that they will address arguments coming from both sides.
Sorry. Whip. Whip.
Audionya putus-putus ya.
Yep, it is.
Okay.
Let's wait until Upwip can hear us.
Hello, I can hear.
Okay. Your audio is really inaudible. The breakup is really bad.
Okay, should I start from the beginning? I will change my connection.
Oh yeah,
should I
please
start from the
change
beginning?
your connection. I think you already reached 155, so you can just continue later on. After you change your connection, I will tell you where you last end.
Yeah, I already changed my connection. Is
Okay,
it better
cool.
now?
much better. The time was 1:55 on my end, and the last thing that you were talking about was we're going to clarify that they're not the actual representative of Palestinian, and then you were moving on to the next point after that.
Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, since they have the same arguments, let's address like all of the arguments of coming from government benches. Firstly, let's talk about saving our people, because OG talk about how they have no alternative, and if we have weapon, we will survive. This is what OO failed to respond. But this is my response. Firstly, since when did the requirement to stay living is to have a weapon? Second, what do they actually need? I think what they need is actually water, they need electricity, they need these things that is actually contingent to Israel, right? Yeah, this is like exactly the problem. The principle of war crime that they can dismiss, so they can dismiss self-defense. The idea under Israel mind is that the integration between those two, like Hamas and Fatah, or even just Hamas and Palestinian people, make it looks like, the people on the ground in Gaza are actually associated with Hamas. That way it's actually legitimate for them, and it's not actually a war crime to actually attack them and actually cut their water and electricity. So what happened under your side? Not only that they have a legitimate reason because you're associated with terrorists, but I think that since you're going to integrate it with West Bank that is actually currently are not associated, they will also be hostile to West Bank. So you will only spread the hostility, right? So what's the manifestation? Manifestation, child dying, people do not get basic need at all because because it's all being cut off by Israel. So what's under their best case scenario? Yes, they do have gun, but sure, can you eat the gun? Who will use the gun if they don't even have water to drink, right? So yeah,
POI.
they lose on this. So no, thank you. What actually happened under our side? What's the counterparty of serving people under our side? I think that we are aware that some of our daily need is still contingent on Israel. This is how we're different with OO, because we know that exactly what people on the ground need. They need water, they need electricity, so we do not want to engage to like any hostility that makes this kind of hostility that Israel doing is continue. So further under our side, I think that Fatah under our side will be like the dominant actor of Palestine and dissociate with Hamas. So what does it show you? What will happen? What will change? What will change is that gives Israel urgency to stop, because because there is a clear distinction between so-called terrorist group and Hamas, and now Palestinian people in Gaza also going to be distincted because we're going to completely detach from Hamas. So these Palestinian people in Gaza have to be protected, and they're different from these people who are doing the war crime. So the Hamas is not at all associated with civil people of Gaza. So I think that the outcome is West Bank is safe from occupation because we're not associating. But secondly, we're also at the very least give Gaza people at the very least the sense of basic need because of the urgency that we gave. No, thank you. But secondly, then let's talk about the better push of resolution. What we get from government is that Hamas is good because they have bombs and tanks. Yeah, no, because what do we actually need to create a resolution? What do you actually need is to be heard in a discussion. So I think that OO did talk about international post, and it's really good. But I think that the most important thing that you need to have is to have a legitimacy. You need to be recognized as a state. That's why Indonesia was recognized the moment they changed their strategy from bamboo runcing to actually attending conference, right? What does it mean? It means that when you want to be recognized as a state, you need to act like one. So what's happened under their side? Yeah, so this is also what OO missing in explanation, because you would associated with terrorists, it's further exacerbate the fact that lots of country already see Hamas as an obstacle of hampering peaceful resolution. So this is why you're not going to get hurt, and it's also going to shaken the narrative or like the mind of people who already support you to begin with, right? So also the missing context, because a lot of country already support Palestinian, right? Like a lot of country already support, like 100 country already support for the ceasefire. The reason why Palestinian can push for better resolution is some big chunk of part of Palestine is still deemed as illegitimate by a lot of international body, and we cannot say anything about it because it's true, because Hamas is actually attacking these people, right? That's why we have to detach. This is why we have to disassociate, and this is why we should disown Hamas. So how does resolution actually happening in CO? Firstly, I think that we push for peaceful resolution. The moment when we can do this, and we already, because we know that we already become somehow like Fatah already become a legitimate body that is actually recognized. This is why we don't want to lose the status. We want to keep our power. This is why we're going to push the
resolution and like a lot of international conference. But second, I think that's the ceasefire that everyone wants will more likely to happen under our house, because we at the very least do not associate with these people, and we even want to completely detach. So there is a lot of more reason for people to actually support us. There is no reason for countries like USA to actually condemn us anymore, because they're not part of us, and we actually do not support any kind of action that they do. So it's the weighing. I think that compared to all benches, we talk about the things that more likely to be needed and essential to, and also becoming the requirement to, for any argument to run. Firstly, the requirement of people actually living is for them to get their basic need. We cover that on the class of safety. But secondly, also we cover the different ideology and how it's different the context about different ideology, and also we cover about how we're gonna create a push for better resolution purpose.